Welcome to the Authority File, the academic library podcast from Choice, brought to you by Taylor and Francis. I'm Bill Mickey, the host of the podcast and the editorial director at Choice. This week I'm joined by Stephanie Davis-Kahl, scholarly communications librarian and professor at Illinois Wesleyan University, and Dylan Burns, digital scholarship librarian at Utah State University. And we continue our conversation about institutional repositories, talking about how and why their IRs got off the ground and what they've since turned into. Okay, so both of your repositories are approaching their 10-year anniversary. I'm wondering if, in general terms, if you could describe the early days of each of them, what their original functions were and why they were created, and maybe put that in the context of each of your institutions, and thinking about how your repositories back in the day uniquely represented your institutions. And Dylan, why don't we start with you on that one?
So I wasn't around for the early days of my institutional repository. We're now, as you said, closing in on our 10th anniversary. And I've only been here for the last 2 years of it. But our institutional repository started, like many others, as just a collection of postprints and preprints, sharing, trying to make open access articles and research, created by faculty. From the very beginning, it reflected our strength in undergraduate research. Undergraduate research has always been a pillar from the very beginning of the institutional repository. It kind of started very traditionally, and it's grown out of that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then Stephanie, how about you?
So when we first started talking about our institutional repository, there was sort of this perfect storm of great timing. So we had a new university librarian who joined us from the University of Illinois, and they have a very robust repository program there. So she came in wanting to do this and was and really connected with one of our strategic plan objectives from a few years before she started. So she knew this was something that we could achieve. So between our library strategic plan and our new university librarian, we also had an ally in our past associate provost, whose name is Frank Boyd. He's now the provost at Guilford College. So he was really attracted to this idea, especially with regards to opening up our students' work. And as a small private liberal arts institution, that's really the core of who we are. We're very focused on teaching, very focused on mentorship, and undergraduate research has a long tradition here at IWU. So between Karen and Frank and a committee of faculty, we were able to bring this idea to fruition and brought up the repository in early 2008 using digital commons. So it was seen as a great way to enhance access to our student work, to really showcase the work that's been done not only on the part of students, but also on the part of faculty. And then also, it was a great answer to the question of what happens at a liberal arts college. Mm-hmm. What do students achieve? And we were, looking back, it was right before the recession hit. So if we had that conversation even 6 months or a year after we did, I think the story would have a very different ending. So the timing was perfect. The people who needed to be in the room were in the room. So right. I'm pretty thankful for all that.
Good. Dylan, let's talk a little bit about, without talking in too much detail, because we'll get into this in the next episode. But and I think you mentioned this briefly in the last question. But how are the functions of the the broader strategy of your repository evolved since they launched. Can you describe the growth curve in terms of the content mix or any kind of insight into the changes in why it was being collected, and who sees the content or why they see it, or different types of collaborations or interactions with different departments within the institution or outside of the institution even. Talk about sort of that trajectory in the last 10 years for your repository.
Yeah, so, we started in this place where I think a lot of institutional repositories start is this, Judy talked about it earlier, this reliance upon our faculty to submit the correct versions of things to make them open access via green open access. We started in that kind of place, and we've actually, because of the success, in capturing that and showing impact and being able to provide metrics for our faculty, we've seen a lot of partnerships in many of our departments between the library and individual researchers or research centers. We're a mid-sized research institution, so we have we still have we have a lot of federal money that comes in, a lot of grant money that comes in, a lot of research that's being done on campus. So some of those faculty who were early, proponents of the IR started to see it as a place where they could start to store more things than just their postprints and their preprints. So we have, we have research centers on campus, but they'll start to capture like their student theses and dissertations that come out of grad students that work there. So, creating those partnerships has sort of shifted how we're, strategizing for the future. But we've also started to move away from just what's currently going on and what current research is being done and trying to capture historical stuff. We in the last 5 or 6 years, we've been on a concerted effort to digitize many of our older theses and dissertations that were bound, in the library and put those online. And that led to the graduate school making the digital commons version of the thesis and dissertation, the version of record for those things. So we now, only have digital, electronic theses and dissertations at this point. And that's kind of a move that we, through the success of the IR, we've kind of been able to guide the graduate school along.
Okay. And then Stephanie, over to you.
So in terms of functions, when we started, so much of what we put in the repository was text. We had honors research and we had articles from our student journals. And I don't think we're unique in that.
Yeah.
So, but students do all sorts of different kinds of work at IWU. So we have art students, we have music students, we have students who generate data as part of their honors research. We have visual ethnography projects. So part of our challenge has been working to try to accommodate all these different format needs. And again, I don't think we're unique in that at all. I think that's a challenge that a lot of us are facing. So
right.
There's multimodal projects and video and audio as well. And then something that comes along with that is giving students enough choices for access. So the clarity of the options that they have. So open access or embargoes or not posting at all, but still having it somewhere that's accessible in person. One example of this is we worked with our music faculty, a composition professor, to create a new permissions form for the music students so they were aware of all the different options that they had. So depositing their score in the library in print form, having a non-downloadable performance recording of the performance, and so on. In terms of strategy, it never stops. The outreach around the repository never stops. I think the difference is now we have actual evidence of the global reach of downloads through our Digital Commons dashboard. So that data visualization really helps to prove our point about the possible impact that student and faculty work is having. And the metrics that Judy mentioned earlier about uploads,
Right.
and also where downloads are coming from is also pretty compelling. It's compelling to admissions and also for our university communications. And those are two groups that we have been really trying to get in the door with. And they've been very receptive and supportive.
After listening to the needs of the librarian community, Taylor and Francis is happy to announce the recent launch of a single destination platform for their digital products, Taylor and Francis eBooks. Featuring over 90,000 titles of award-winning academic content written by a global network of editors and authors, Taylor and Francis is eager to spread the word, offering key subjects such as science, technology, engineering, medicine, humanities, and social science. Taylor and Francis eBooks puts a world of knowledge at your fingertips. Experience increased functionality, an intuitive dashboard, and gain quick access to the key information you need to make managing your collections as easy as possible. You can also explore their open access ebooks in business, science, social science, psychology, and much more. To request a free trial of any of their collections and to try out the new platform for yourself, visit www.taylorfrancis.com. That's taylorfrancis, all one word, .com. Stephanie, we'll continue with you on this line, but how has that evolution revealed perhaps, the changing dynamics of higher ed in general at your institutions or even more broadly, nationally even? In other words, what are some of the trends at your institutions that are creating, opportunities or even challenges for what you're doing with your repositories?
Well, I think that when you look more broadly, there's a lot of talk about students having a signature experience. This has been covered pretty recently in the Chronicle, and maybe inside higher ed too. But schools are really trying to create these experiences, create these opportunities for students to bring all of what they've done at the institution between curriculum and study abroad, maybe internships, all into one experience where they reflect and then create something that kind of brings it all together. So that's something that we've been talking about a lot on our campus. And of course, as our faculty are talking about it in their departments and in interdisciplinary conversations, we in the library have been thinking about, okay, so if history does a video signature experience, then how do we get in the room and talk to students about how to use various sources and how to incorporate those sources ethically? And then also, what can we do with a final product? How are we going to talk to students about how they can share that final product? How can we talk to our colleagues at BPress to make sure that the platform can handle what the students are creating? Another trend is high-impact educational practices from the AAC&U. So how can the repository represent all these different practices, such as learning communities, such as high-impact writing, study abroad, collaborative learning? Is there a way that we can put a marker in the repository for when these things are happening? And that's a challenge that we haven't even broached yet, but hopefully people who are visiting our repository can see those in the product, in the student work and the faculty work that they're viewing.
Mm-hmm. And then, Dylan, are you guys going through a similar process in terms of how external trends might be impacting what you're looking at doing with your repository?
Yeah, and I think that, one of the differences between Stephanie and I's institutions and the way that impacts our individual institutional repositories is the size of the institution and the research that's created, because we, after the OSTP mandate, we got a lot of our science and engineering and faculty, needing really quick crash courses in open access and providing especially open access repositories and depositing of their data. Right. So we, in the last handful of years, have we have a data librarian who works closely with me and my staff, and we have to I had to get a crash course in data and that sort of stuff, and we've seen kind of that trend on the national scale sort of impacting us in small Logan, Utah. I think that people are initially, our faculty were sort of a little freaked out about any requirements that they had to deposit their data, but they've actually.
I'm sorry, Dylan. So what was that? Can you describe that mandate that came down? What was that?
So the OSTP mandate is the Office of Science and Technology policy that was in the Obama White House. Mm-hmm. In February of 2013, they issued a policy memo that basically said that federally funded research, that the objects created out of federally funded research needed to be openly available, needed to be deposited in open access repositories. Many of the disciplines, especially in the sciences, have discipline-specific repositories, that are best, data together kind of makes sense for that sort of searching purposes. But we've had a number of faculty who, want their data and their research that's federally funded, close to home. So we worked with our faculty to, open up a new, sort of data series in our digital commons and provide that kind of expertise and find the best places for their data and their open materials, as well as just kind of giving them advice on what they need to do to be in compliance, because I think that any time there's something coming down from the White House that affects you as a researcher, you get kind of freaked out because, a tremendous amount of their, work and research is funded federally. So that's been something that has kind of changed the nature of our work.
You just heard from Stephanie Davis-Kahl and Dylan Burns. This concludes the second of our 4 episodes on tracing the evolution of institutional repositories. This episode was brought to you by Taylor and Francis. Be sure to join us for the next episode, where we speak with Stephanie and Dylan about the current structure of their repositories and the new collaborative opportunities that are opening up because of them.
Our extension office was really excited when we, created the IR and had the IR up and going, because this was a way that they could fulfill their mission of providing high quality information about agriculture in Utah to the widest audience possible.
Find all of the episodes of The Authority File on your favorite podcast app or on our website, choice360.org. Just click on the librarianship drop-down. To download the white paper on the evolution of institutional repositories that Judy Luther and Choice published, click on the same librarianship drop-down and select White Papers. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.